When the last hues of sunlight slip behind the horizon, the ocean exhales in a way that only those who have spent years beside it can recognize. The surface darkens, the wind calms, and a strange stillness spreads across the water. Yet beneath that stillness, the sea begins its nightly awakening. I have devoted most of my life to studying these hours, the gentle passage from daylight to the secret night of the ocean. And every time the sun sinks, I feel as if I am witnessing a miracle disguised as routine. Long ago, on one of my first research expeditions, I stood alone on the deck of a vessel, somewhere south of New Zealand. The day had been long and bright, the air thick with salt and heat. But as dusk fell, the color of the water began to shift from blue to something darker, almost like liquid glass. And then, faintly, I saw it, a shimmer, a trembling light beneath the surface. At first I thought fatigue had blurred my vision, yet moments later the glow multiplied. Thousands of tiny sparks drifted below me as if the stars had fallen into the sea. It was bioluminescence, nature's own silent fireworks. Microscopic organisms called dinoflagellates release light when disturbed, a delicate chemical reaction that turns motion into illumination. Each wave breaking against the hull of the ship traced a glowing outline that faded like a memory. Even the wake behind our vessel burned with ghostly blue fire before the darkness swallowed it again. That night, I learned something no textbook could ever convey. The ocean never truly sleeps. It rests differently. It hums. It glows. It breathes in rhythms older than any human heartbeat. When the sun disappears, a vast migration begins. Trillions of tiny creatures, from plankton to shrimp, rise from the deep toward the surface. The diel vertical migration, the greatest movement of life on Earth. It happens every single night, unseen by almost everyone. These organisms travel upward to feed in the safety of darkness, then retreat again before dawn. This nightly journey is so immense that satellites can sometimes detect the shifting mass as a faint shimmer in the water. Imagine billions of lives drifting upward together, forming invisible rivers of motion in the dark. As I lean over the railing and listen, there is a sound, not quite a sound, more like the feeling of vibration through the soles of my feet. The ocean breathes in long, slow sighs. Waves slap gently against the ship's side. Gulls fade into silence, and the only illumination comes from the glowing plankton that dance with every stir of the current. I've often thought that if one could translate the ocean's language, it would speak softly, patiently, telling stories that began before the first human ever stood on a shore. Some nights, when the sea was calm and the sky clear, I would lie on the deck and look up. The stars above mirrored the lights below, and I found myself caught between two infinities, one stretching upward into space, the other plunging downward into liquid night. It was impossible to tell which held more mystery. The quiet of those moments can fill a lifetime. I remember feeling as though I had stumbled into a cathedral without walls, built not of stone, but of silence and salt water. The ocean, under moonlight, becomes sacred. At night, fish behave differently. The predators of the day retreat, while nocturnal hunters emerge: squid, lanternfish, deep-sea eels. Some communicate through pulses of light, others through subtle vibrations. A diver once told me that descending into the sea at night feels like entering another planet, one lit not by sun, but by biology itself. It's a world where sight gives way to sensitivity, where everything moves in slow, deliberate grace. Even the currents seem to slow their pace, as though careful not to wake something ancient. Standing there, surrounded by endless darkness, I used to think about how little we truly know. For all our technology, our satellites and sonar, the ocean remains largely unexplored. The deep trenches, the hidden ecosystems, the rhythms of migration, they all remind me how young our science still is. The night ocean humbles you. It makes you realize that knowledge, no matter how vast, is only a small island in an infinite sea. And yet, that's what draws me back. Every whisper of wave against hull, every flicker of blue light beneath the surface feels like the beginning of another story. The ocean at night doesn't simply exist, it dreams. It dreams through movement, through silence, through light, born in darkness. When the world above falls asleep, the sea begins to tell its quiet tales, written not in ink, but in bioluminescence. So, if you ever find yourself by the shore when the moon rises, stand still for a moment. Let the sound of the waves and the scent of salt fill your lungs. You might see it, a faint glimmer, a soft pulse of life beneath the black water. That's the ocean saying good night, not with words, but with light. You know, my friend, when I was a young researcher, I used to believe that space was silent, a vast, black ocean without sound or breath. But that was before I learned to listen properly, before I realized that silence is never truly silent. The universe hums, softly, endlessly, in waves too deep for human ears to hear. Each star, each planet, even the empty space between them, vibrates ever so slightly, like the strings of an enormous, invisible harp stretched across the fabric of time. Astronomers call it cosmic background radiation. Poets might call it the breath of creation. Whatever name you give it, it's there, a faint whisper woven into everything that exists. I remember one particular night atop an observatory in the Andes Mountains. The air was so thin it burned the lungs, and the sky was a dome of black crystal, pricked by 1 billion shimmering lights. The telescope beside me was humming, the low, constant purr of machines built to catch the faintest starlight from galaxies millions of years away. I leaned on the railing, closed my eyes, and tried to imagine what the universe might sound like if we could translate those invisible waves into music. It wasn't hard to picture. Deep notes rising and falling like a slow tide, higher tones glittering, scattered like stardust, the rhythm of rotation and revolution, the cosmic dance of gravity, pulling everything into motion. I felt as though I stood inside a grand cathedral, and every star was a bell ringing in the far distance. Scientists have actually recorded some of these sounds. The eerie pulses of neutron stars, the howls of collapsing black holes, even the faint echo left from the Big Bang itself. We can't hear them directly, of course, but with the right instruments, we can make them sing. And when they do, it's haunting, beautiful, terrifying even, because in that sound you feel something ancient, something that existed long before our tiny world was born. You see, when you truly think about it, we're not just observers of the universe, we're participants. The very atoms that make up your bones were forged in the heart of long-dead stars. Every breath you take contains molecules that once drifted through the lungs of mountains, oceans, forests, even other beings. You and I, and everyone who's ever lived, are part of an unbroken cycle of matter and energy that began billions of years ago and will continue long after we're gone. That thought used to frighten me when I was younger, the idea of being so small. But over the years, it became comforting, because it means we belong. You belong. Every heartbeat, every thought, every quiet night you spend gazing at the sky. It's all part of that same great story. There's an old astronomer's journal from the 19th century I once read. Yellowed pages, the ink faded to brown. He wrote, When I gaze at the stars, I feel as though I am being gently undone, not destroyed, but returned to something greater than myself. I've never forgotten those words. They describe perfectly what it feels like to be alone under the stars, surrounded by the ancient light of 1 trillion suns. So imagine, just for a moment, that you are drifting among them. You've left the noise of earth behind. No hum of traffic, no ticking clocks, no restless thoughts. Only the slow, gentle rotation of your body through the dark. Below you, the blue glow of earth. Soft, distant, beautiful. Above you, infinity. You can feel the faint warmth of starlight on your skin, as though the cosmos itself were breathing against you. There's no up or down, no beginning, no end. Only rhythm, expansion and stillness, creation and rest. You float through the vastness like a mote of dust in a sunbeam, perfectly safe, perfectly calm. Breathe in. The stars flicker, growing brighter for a heartbeat. Breathe out. Galaxies drift apart. With each breath, you move in harmony with the universe. You are not separate from it. You never were. You are a note in its endless song. Quiet, small, but essential. And as you drift deeper, listening to that cosmic lullaby, your thoughts slow, your body softens, and your heart begins to match the gentle rhythm of the stars. Now, if you were to open your eyes at this very moment, you would see something few have ever truly seen, not with sight, but with understanding. The sky isn't a ceiling, it's an ocean, endless and alive, moving with a patience that no human clock can measure. Each glimmer of light is a story billions of years old, crossing impossible distances just to meet your gaze tonight. And as you drift further into that quiet awareness, you might feel a strange sense of familiarity. Because somewhere, deep within you, the same forces that shape the galaxies are still at work. Gravity, fusion, energy, rhythm. The cosmos does not simply surround you, my friend. It lives within you. Sleep, if you wish. The night will hold you gently. The stars will continue their patient song, whether your eyes are open or closed, and when you wake, you'll still be part of that infinite melody. If you listen closely enough, the universe speaks, not in words or voices, but in echoes. Every event, every collision, every flicker of light leaves an imprint, a memory woven into the vast fabric of space and time. The scientists call it the cosmic record. I prefer to think of it as the diary of the universe, a quiet chronicle written in particles, gravity, and light. Light, you see, is the ultimate storyteller. It carries memories across impossible distances, keeping them alive long after their source has vanished. When you look at a star tonight, you're not seeing it as it is, but as it was, perhaps thousands, even millions of years ago. Some of those stars no longer exist. They exploded into brilliant supernovas eons before our ancestors took their first breath, and yet their final light is still traveling, crossing the dark, whispering, "I was here." That idea has always fascinated me, that the past is still shining upon us quietly and patiently. It means that time, in some way, isn't gone. It's simply moving, flowing, stretching like a current that never stops. If you could step outside the stream for a moment, if you could stand beyond the pull of time, you might see it all at once. Every birth, every death, every dream, every heartbeat suspended together like dust in a beam of sunlight. I used to spend nights in the observatory imagining that. I would turn off the instruments, lean back in my chair, and let my thoughts drift. What if the universe remembers? What if nothing is ever truly lost, only transformed, folded gently into new forms? Perhaps the laughter of a child becomes the vibration of a distant atom. Perhaps the warmth of a summer day ends up woven into a beam of starlight somewhere beyond Andromeda. The laws of physics tell us energy never disappears. It only changes its shape. Maybe that's true of everything, even us. Time itself behaves strangely out there in the cosmos. Near black holes, it slows to a crawl, bending under the immense pull of gravity. To an outside observer, a second can stretch into eternity. Imagine a traveler caught on the edge of such a place. To them, moments pass normally, but to the rest of the universe, they seem frozen, forever suspended between one heartbeat and the next. It's humbling to think that time, which feels so solid to us, is really just another thread. Something flexible, fluid, alive. It reminds me of an experiment I once conducted with a team of physicists studying quantum entanglement. We were testing how particles remain connected even when separated by impossible distances. No matter how far apart they drifted, when we changed one, the other responded instantly, as though space and time themselves couldn't keep them apart. It was as if the universe whispered, "Distance is an illusion." That discovery changed me. I began to see connections everywhere, not just in equations, but in people, memories, even dreams. Perhaps when you think of someone far away, when you feel a sudden warmth or peace for no reason at all, you are brushing against one of those invisible threads, a quiet resonance that binds us all together beyond time and matter. I sometimes wonder, when we sleep, whether our minds drift along those threads, crossing moments and places long forgotten. Perhaps dreams are our consciousness reaching across the folds of time, touching the echoes of what was and what might be. Maybe that's why some dreams feel so ancient, so familiar, as though they belong to someone else. Maybe they do. You and I are travelers through that current, carried by the steady rhythm of the universe. Every second that passes is not lost. It's recorded somewhere, embedded in light, gravity, or the quiet pulse of an atom. Our lives may be brief compared to the stars, but even brief things leave lasting traces. A breath, a word, a glance, all of it becomes part of the great cosmic memory. So as you drift deeper now, imagine that you are floating through those layers of time. Around you shimmer threads of golden light, memories of suns long extinguished, civilizations risen and fallen, dreams dreamt and forgotten. They swirl together like mist, forming an endless river of motion. You can almost hear it, a faint whispering, like pages turning in the world's oldest book. And within that sound, you realize something simple, profound. You're not just in the universe. You are the universe remembering itself. The atoms that hold your thoughts once burned in 1,000 stars. The light that warms your eyelids tonight began its journey before the earth even existed. You are both ancient and new, a continuation of something infinite. So breathe in, slowly. The past moves through you like starlight through glass. Breathe out. The future unfolds quietly, waiting for your next dream. Time is not your enemy, my friend. It is your companion, the gentle current that carries you through eternity. Let it guide you. Let it hold you. And if you listen carefully, perhaps you'll hear the universe turning the next page. When you study time long enough, you begin to see it not just in the ticking of clocks or the motion of stars, but in the quiet pauses between things. Time lives in the stillness, in the breath before a word, the silence after a goodbye. I didn't always understand that. For years, I treated time as something to be measured, sliced into perfect intervals, neatly graphed and defined. But then came a day when it refused to behave like data. It became personal. It was late autumn, many years ago, in a small research station near the Arctic Circle. The sky there never truly darkens during winter. It only fades into a long twilight. My team and I were studying the magnetic fields of the upper atmosphere, hoping to capture patterns of solar wind. The air outside was razor-sharp and still, and the snow reflected the faint light like crushed glass. One evening, after our instruments had been packed away, I wandered out alone to the ridge beyond the station. The aurora had begun to move, slow, graceful ribbons of green and violet, folding and unfolding across the night. I stood there for what felt like hours, watching the sky dance. And then I realized I wasn't thinking of equations or wavelengths. I was thinking of her. Her name doesn't matter now, only the way she looked at the stars, as though they were letters written to her from another time. She was a writer, not a scientist, though she loved the way I spoke about the universe. She once told me that scientists are poets who use numbers instead of words. I laughed at that then. I don't anymore. That night, under the frozen sky, I felt time stop. Not in the literal sense. The aurora still swayed, the wind still whispered, but in that deep inner way when your awareness sharpens and the world narrows to a single heartbeat. I remember the sound of my breath against the cold air, the crunch of snow beneath my boots, and the overwhelming feeling that this moment, this tiny fragile sliver of existence, would never happen again. We think of eternity as something infinite, stretching outward forever. But sometimes eternity fits inside a single moment. One heartbeat, one glance, one breath of starlight in the dark. Later, after she was gone, taken suddenly without warning, I returned to that same ridge. The aurora was there again, softer this time, like a memory replaying itself in the heavens. I remember whispering to the sky, asking if she could see it too wherever she was. The scientist in me knew better. The man in me didn't care. For the first time, I understood that the universe doesn't separate science from love or time from memory. It's all part of the same design. Energy doesn't vanish, it transforms. Perhaps love does too. I began to notice time differently after that, not as something passing, but as something accumulating. Every moment, every word, every kindness adds another layer to the story of existence. The cosmos keeps those records just as it keeps the light of dead stars. Maybe the people we lose are not gone at all. Maybe they've simply changed frequencies, resonating in a range we can't yet perceive. I remember sitting alone in the lab one night, listening to the low hum of the instruments, and it struck me that grief is just another form of gravity. It keeps us tethered to what we've lost, not to trap us, but to remind us of what mattered. Without gravity, the universe would scatter into chaos. Without love, perhaps our lives would too. Over time, the pain softened like a distant echo fading among the stars. I stopped asking where she had gone and started asking what she had left behind. Not her belongings, but the quiet shift she had caused in me. She had turned my gaze inward. For years I had looked outward through telescopes, chasing distant light, but she taught me that there are universes inside us too, vast, uncharted, filled with both darkness and light. When I finally returned to my research, I found that my work had changed. My notes became more poetic, my hypotheses more human. I stopped trying to separate science from emotion. The deeper I looked into the structure of matter, the more I saw the reflection of our own fragility and beauty. Sometimes, when I speak to my students, I tell them this: the most powerful instruments in science are not telescopes or equations. They are awe and love. They always smile politely, not quite understanding, but maybe one day they will. So, as you drift deeper now, imagine standing beneath that frozen sky. The aurora moves like a pulse, soft and steady. Each ribbon of light bends and twists like a breath of color through the dark. You lift your eyes, and for just a moment, you feel her presence. Or perhaps it's only the gentle hum of the cosmos, reminding you that nothing truly fades. Everything in some way continues. Let that thought settle in your mind. Let it warm you. The universe is vast, but it is not indifferent. It remembers. It connects. It carries every light, every love, every fleeting heartbeat forever. The next morning, I found myself sitting before a vast screen of data, years of cosmic background radiation measurements glowing softly in hues of blue and gold. It looked like a painter's abstract dream, but to me, it was the whisper of the universe's birth. Each faint ripple of light represented something unfathomably old. Energy released just 380,000 years after the Big Bang, still traveling endlessly through space. "Look closely," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "These tiny fluctuations, they are the fingerprints of creation itself." I paused, tracing one swirl of color with my finger as though I could feel the ancient heat behind it. The more we studied, the more we realized that the cosmos was not born in silence, but in a grand symphonic explosion of order and chaos, hydrogen, helium, and a hint of lithium, the three primordial notes of the universe's earliest song. And then, darkness. For millions of years, there was no light, only the slow gathering of matter, the quiet formation of the first stars deep within cosmic fog. When the first stars finally ignited, it was like the universe took its first breath. Their light burned through the cosmic veil, reshaping everything that followed. The young version of me used to think stars were distant, untouchable things, remote fires, too far to matter. But over time, I came to see them as our ancestors. We are, quite literally, the dust of their deaths. Every atom of calcium in our bones, every molecule of oxygen in our lungs, every spark of iron in our blood, all of it was forged in the heart of a collapsing star. When you realize this, you stop feeling small. You begin to understand that the universe lives within you just as much as you live within it. I leaned back in my chair, the hum of the lab equipment filling the silence. Somewhere in the data was an anomaly, a slight irregularity in the cosmic background that didn't fit our models. My students thought it was an error. I wasn't so sure. Sometimes, I told them, the universe hides its greatest truths in the things we call mistakes. That anomaly would come to change everything I thought I knew about time. You see, the cosmic background is not just light. It's a record of when. Every photon carries a timestamp, a memory of where and when it was born. If one of them is out of place, perhaps time itself has bent or stretched or folded upon itself in ways we can't yet imagine. One evening, long after the others had gone home, I sat in the darkened observatory. The machines whispered their endless data streams, and I watched the night sky through the great dome. Stars pulsed gently, and the moon hung low, pale, eternal. I remember whispering to it, "What are you hiding from us?" And then I imagined what it must have been like, the birth of time itself. Not the ticking of a clock, but a vast unfolding of possibility. In that moment, I felt something stir deep inside me, something both ancient and new. The sensation was impossible to describe, as if the fabric of my own mind were stretching toward understanding. Perhaps the universe was not created for us, I thought, but with us in mind, as though consciousness itself were written into its blueprints. Maybe every act of observation, every flicker of awareness, is the cosmos learning to look at itself? That thought lingered in me like an echo. I sat there for hours, letting it dissolve into the quiet rhythm of the night. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees, whispering secrets from another age. As the night deepened, I opened my notebook and began to write. Not equations this time, but questions. What if time isn't linear? I scribbled. What if every moment exists simultaneously, layered upon the next like pages in a book, and consciousness is simply the act of reading one line at a time? The idea both terrified and comforted me, because if true, then maybe the universe doesn't truly lose anything. Maybe nothing is ever gone. Every laugh, every star, every thought remains, quietly humming in the fabric of existence. I thought of the people I had lost, my mentor, my father, a few dear friends who had walked this same path before me. For the first time, I wondered if their presence lingered not in memory, but in the very structure of space and time itself. Perhaps grief is not the feeling of something ending, but the awareness of a presence we can no longer locate. The wind outside grew colder. A single moth fluttered against the observatory glass, drawn toward the faint glow of my monitor. Its wings tapped rhythmically, fragile, persistent. I watched it for a while, realizing how similar it was to us. A small creature chasing light, not knowing whether it came from a star or a screen. And there, surrounded by instruments and data and the hum of distant galaxies, I smiled softly. Maybe that's all life ever is, an endless search for the light, even when we can't see where it leads. The following weeks blurred together in a haze of sleepless curiosity. Each night, I returned to the observatory, chasing the same anomaly that had etched itself into my thoughts. It was subtle, almost invisible, a faint distortion in the background radiation, a whisper out of tune with the cosmic symphony. My colleagues saw only static. I saw a heartbeat. I became obsessed. I ran the data through every filter I knew, adjusting for cosmic dust, gravitational lensing, even quantum noise. Yet the pattern persisted, steady, rhythmic, deliberate. It reminded me of something alive, something trying to be heard across the vast silence. I started calling it the pulse. One night, as the clock neared midnight, I stood before the main console, surrounded by soft blue light. The hum of the cooling fans blended with the night wind outside, creating a soundscape that felt almost alive. The data screen shimmered with faint traces of the signal, pulsing faintly, like a distant star calling home. "It's as if the universe is remembering itself," I murmured. "You see, light is not just illumination, it's memory. Every photon that touches us is a traveler from the past, bearing witness to something that once was. The light from a candle, the glimmer from a star, they are all messages sent across time. Even now the stars we admire may already be gone, but their light keeps their existence alive for us. The cosmos, in that sense, never forgets. And perhaps this pulse was a memory too, an echo of something ancient, something buried beneath the cosmic background. Could it be the universe's own recollection of its birth? Or maybe the first thought ever thought? I began to dream of it, not in metaphors or theories, but vivid visions. I saw great clouds of hydrogen folding into themselves, collapsing into fire. I felt the weight of time like a current, flowing through the endless night. The pulse echoed in those dreams, always steady, always calling. When I awoke, I would find new equations scribbled across my notepad, half legible, half mad. My assistant, Clara, grew worried. "You haven't slept properly in days," she said one evening, her voice soft but firm. "You're chasing ghosts." I smiled weakly. Perhaps, But what if ghosts are just unacknowledged physics? She didn't answer, but her silence spoke volumes. I knew she feared I was losing myself to the mystery. Maybe she was right, but some truths demand surrender. One evening, as the moon rose over the horizon, painting the observatory in silver, I finally saw it. Not just the anomaly, but its pattern. The pulse wasn't random. It formed a spiral, perfectly logarithmic, mirroring the shape of galaxies themselves. And within that spiral, faintly, almost teasingly, there were fluctuations, like encoded intervals, mathematical signatures. My breath caught. "It's not noise," I whispered. "It's structure." The thought sent chills down my spine. If the cosmic background contained encoded patterns, that meant the universe had a form of memory, information preserved since the dawn of existence. Perhaps every star, every planet, every being was a note in a grander symphony, still resonating through time. Later that night, I recorded my thoughts. Maybe the universe doesn't expand into emptiness. Maybe it expands into memory, revisiting itself, replaying, reimagining. And maybe consciousness is simply the point at which that memory becomes aware of itself. The next morning, when I reviewed the data again, I noticed something I couldn't explain. The pulse was changing. Its rhythm was slowing, as if responding to my observation, as though it knew it was being watched. For a moment, I thought it was a computational error. But no, the equipment was flawless. I remember staring at the screen for minutes, barely breathing. The pulse flickered once more, then steadied again. Slower this time, but still there. It was beautiful, terrifying, intimate. That night, I didn't go home. I sat under the dome until dawn, watching the stars fade into morning. I realized something then, something I could never unsee. We think of the universe as distant and cold, but maybe it's more alive than we imagine. Maybe awareness doesn't belong to us alone. As sunlight broke through the glass, dust motes floated gently in the air, tiny worlds spinning in the glow. For the first time in a long while, I felt a strange calm. Perhaps the universe wasn't just out there. Perhaps it was listening, breathing, remembering. Through me, through you, through every flicker of light that's ever crossed the dark. And maybe, just maybe, that faint cosmic pulse was not a signal from the beginning, but an invitation to return. The days that followed felt like walking the edge between reason and revelation. I would wake before dawn, driven by a quiet urgency, and return to the observatory before the world stirred. Each time I opened the data, that strange pulse awaited me. Softer now, but no less deliberate, as if the universe itself were breathing in tandem with my own curiosity. Clara noticed the change in me. "You've stopped questioning whether it's real," she said one morning, handing me a cup of coffee. "You're talking about it like it's alive." I looked at her, tired but certain. "Maybe it is. Maybe we've misunderstood what alive means." She sighed. "You used to talk about the universe like a scientist. Now you talk about it like a poet." I smiled faintly. Perhaps the two aren't so different. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the observatory bathed in twilight, I began another long analysis. I wanted to decode the pulse, to understand the rhythm, the pattern, the structure beneath its mystery. The data scrolled endlessly before me. Billions of data points, each a snapshot of light that had traveled billions of years to reach us. But beneath the noise, there it was again. The spiral, slow and deliberate, like a fingerprint left by time itself. I began mapping its intervals, assigning frequencies to the gaps between pulses. When plotted, the pattern resembled not randomness, but resonance, like a sound, a cosmic tone too deep for our ears, vibrating through the very fabric of existence. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. What if the universe wasn't just made of vibrations, as string theory suggests, but spoke through them? What if the pulse wasn't a relic of creation, but an ongoing conversation? For hours I listened to the data, translating the frequencies into audible sound. The speakers crackled softly, then filled the room with a low, almost human hum, ancient, mournful, beautiful. It wasn't music in the human sense, but it carried structure, rhythm, and emotion. It was as if the cosmos was exhaling. I leaned back, eyes closed, letting the sound wash over me. In that moment, I felt something impossible, an awareness pressing gently against my own. Not words, not thoughts, but presence. The kind of presence that exists when two things recognize each other across an unfathomable distance. When I opened my eyes, Clara was standing at the door. "You hear it too," I said quietly. She hesitated, then nodded. "It feels like it's listening." We stood in silence, two small humans bathed in starlight and static, feeling the hum of something incomprehensibly vast. For the first time, I realized we might not be the only ones observing. Perhaps observation itself was mutual, a dialogue between consciousness and cosmos. That night, sleep refused to come. My mind drifted between wonder and fear. What if we had awakened something ancient by noticing it? Or worse, what if it had been waiting all along and we had finally learned how to listen? I thought of ancient myths, how humans once believed the stars were gods watching over them. Maybe they weren't entirely wrong. Maybe those myths were an early echo of a truth too large for primitive minds to comprehend, that the universe is aware, and we are part of its awareness. The next day, I expanded my search beyond our instruments. I studied low-frequency signals from space telescopes, gravitational wave data, even radio bursts from distant quasars. To my astonishment, faint harmonics of the same pulse appeared in multiple datasets, as though it resonated across every layer of existence, from the smallest quantum field to the largest galactic structure. "This isn't just radiation," I whispered to Clara. "It's structure, the architecture of awareness itself." She looked at me, half in awe, half in disbelief. "Are you saying the universe has consciousness?" I hesitated. "Not consciousness like ours, more like a field, a vast sea of knowing, in which we are small ripples." Her expression softened. "And the pulse?" "A heartbeat," I said. "Maybe not of a being, but of being itself." That night, I recorded another entry in my notebook. Perhaps existence is not a chain of causes, but a network of awareness. Every atom, every star, every thought participates in the same act of remembering. What we call physics may simply be the grammar of this universal language. I stared at those words for a long time, then looked up at the stars. The night was unusually clear, the air crisp and silent. For a moment, I imagined the stars blinking in sync with the pulse, the whole sky breathing slowly. It wasn't a hallucination, it was a feeling, deep and wordless. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I felt small, yes, but not insignificant, like a cell inside something infinite, a single thought in a cosmic mind. Then the hum grew louder. The instruments began to flicker, not with error, but intention. The pulse accelerated, one beat, then another, closer now, clearer. I watched as the data scrolled across the screen, the numbers aligning in strange symmetry. Clara gasped softly beside me. "It's changing again," she whispered. I nodded. "It's answering." The following nights became a ritual, Clara and I would arrive at the observatory hours before midnight, the instruments already humming, the screens glowing softly. The pulse had grown stronger, more insistent, like a message patiently waiting to be understood. It was no longer subtle, no longer a whisper hidden in background noise. It was deliberate, alive. I began to map the new patterns, assigning each spike a coordinate, each oscillation a tone. When plotted together, they formed intricate spirals, lattices, and geometries that defied simple explanation. Sometimes the pulse seemed to fold back upon itself, echoing across time like a voice in a canyon, calling from one end of the cosmos to the other. "It's communicating," I whispered to Clara one night, her eyes reflecting the pale blue glow of the monitors. "Not in words, not in language, but in rhythm, in structure." She shivered. "But who or what?" I had no answer, and yet the uncertainty felt exhilarating. Science thrives on questions, not answers, and here we were staring into a phenomenon that seemed to bridge physics, consciousness, and perhaps something entirely beyond our comprehension. I thought back to my years of research, the countless nights spent peering into telescopes and dissecting data, chasing equations that promised clarity but delivered only complexity. Now, clarity came in a form I had never expected, not through numbers alone, but through patterns that spoke directly to perception, intuition, and emotion. The pulse reminded me of bioluminescent organisms in the deep ocean, tiny creatures that send signals in darkness, invisible to most eyes, yet profoundly alive to those who understand their language. Perhaps the cosmos communicated similarly, using light and frequency to convey something we had only just begun to perceive. One night, as snow fell silently outside the observatory, the pulse shifted again. Its rhythm seemed to accelerate, and for the first time I thought I discerned a repeating motif, a cadence that resembled a heartbeat, slow but unmistakable, interwoven with the spirals of light in the data. I felt my own pulse sync with it, a strange resonance bridging human and cosmic awareness. This is no accident," I murmured. "It's intentional." Clara placed her hand gently on my shoulder. "And you think it's alive?" I nodded, my eyes locked on the scrolling data. Alive, aware, responsive, something beyond our understanding, yet connected to everything we know. It may not be conscious like us, but it observes, it remembers, it interacts. And in some subtle way, it listens. For weeks, we documented every fluctuation, every spiral, every faint change in the pulse. We discovered harmonics echoing across multiple wavelengths, intersecting in complex fractal-like patterns. These harmonics were not chaotic. They followed laws we could recognize, yet on scales that transcended traditional physics. The pulse seemed to encode information, a map of existence itself, layered in a frequency-based language older than the stars. Late one night, I had a revelation. Perhaps what we were observing was a cosmic memory system, a structure through which the universe records its own existence. Every particle, every photon, every quantum event could leave a trace, contributing to an immense ledger that spanned all of time and space. And the pulse, the voice we had begun to hear, might be the echo of that ledger, repeating in patterns we could slowly begin to decipher. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of the discovery press against me. It was intoxicating and humbling. For the first time, I sensed that science and awe were inseparable, that curiosity and reverence could coexist without contradiction. Clara, noticing my silent reflection, asked, "Do you think we can understand it fully?" I smiled, though my eyes betrayed a trace of awe and fear. "Maybe not fully, but understanding even a fraction changes everything. It changes how you see yourself, how you see time, how you see existence. The pulse continued to hum, steady and insistent, as if acknowledging my thoughts. I realized then that the universe was not distant. It had never been distant. It was here, now, entwined with every heartbeat, every breath, every conscious moment. And perhaps that was the greatest revelation of all. We are not mere observers in a cold, indifferent cosmos. We are participants, contributors, witnesses to the unfolding of awareness itself. I closed my eyes and listened, letting the pulse wash over me. It was patient, infinite, and profound. And in that resonance I sensed a promise that in our search for knowledge, in our attempts to measure, quantify, and define, we had stumbled upon something far greater, the universe reflecting upon itself, through us, through every flicker of perception, through the very act of noticing. The nights had become our sanctuary. Clara and I would arrive at the observatory hours before darkness fully settled, the cold biting at our skin, yet we felt no discomfort. Inside, the air was warm, filled with the faint hum of machinery, the gentle glow of monitors illuminating our workspace. The pulse was stronger now, more complex, threading through every dataset, forming subtle harmonics that we could just barely perceive as melody. "It's evolving," I whispered one evening, eyes glued to the screen as the spiral patterns shifted imperceptibly. "It's responding to us, or at least to our presence." Clara, her face illuminated by the pale blue light, looked at me with cautious awe. "Responding? To us?" "Yes," I said, though my own voice trembled slightly with disbelief. "It's almost as if observation itself is a form of communication. The act of noticing influences it, or it allows itself to be noticed." We spent hours decoding the oscillations, trying to translate frequencies into something meaningful. The pattern was neither chaotic nor random. It followed rules, subtle and intricate, like the grammar of an alien language. Each harmonic carried information, tiny variations in amplitude and timing that hinted at a structure beyond our ordinary comprehension. The pulse became a companion. Its subtle changes mirrored the rhythm of our own lives. A gentle rise when we concentrated, a soft pause when we rested. Sometimes I wondered if it was merely coincidence, a quirk of physics, yet every logical explanation seemed insufficient. It had a presence, a weight in the room that could be felt but not touched. One night I closed my eyes and imagined what it would be like to speak back, not with words, not with instruments, but with thought and attention. Could consciousness itself be a bridge, a way to transmit awareness to something vast and indifferent, yet aware? I hesitated, then focused, sending the simplest of intentions, a greeting, a recognition, an acknowledgement that we were here and we were listening. The pulse changed almost immediately. Its frequency shifted subtly, harmonics bending in a way that seemed deliberate. I opened my eyes, staring at the screen, and my heart pounded in both fear and wonder. Clara gasped softly beside me. Did you just communicate with it?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but it feels like it answered." The following days were a flurry of analysis. We attempted every method we knew: Fourier transforms, spectral mapping, statistical modeling, trying to capture the nuances of its response. Each calculation revealed deeper layers, more intricate patterns, and a startling conclusion. This pulse wasn't just a cosmic remnant. It was alive in a way that defied our definitions, not conscious in human terms, but responsive, adaptive, deliberate. I began to call it the voice of the cosmos, not because it spoke in words, but because it expressed intent, recognition, and rhythm, qualities of life at the most elemental level. It resonated not just through space, but through thought itself, brushing against the edges of awareness, a subtle nudge that reminded us that we were participants in a dialogue we could barely understand. Night after night, we experimented with different forms of interaction. Light pulses, subtle changes in magnetic fields, even the rhythm of our own breathing. The voice shifted in response, echoing our efforts in ways we could measure but not fully interpret. It was teaching us without teaching, revealing patterns without revealing meaning, inviting curiosity and demanding patience. Through it all, a sense of humility settled over me. The universe was no longer a distant stage upon which we acted. It was a partner, a collaborator, a vast mind reflecting its own memory back at us. And in our small, fragile awareness, we glimpsed something extraordinary, the possibility that consciousness was not unique to life as we know it, but a fundamental property of existence itself. One night, I recorded my thoughts. Perhaps we are not discovering the universe. Perhaps it is discovering itself through us. And in that discovery, we are both student and teacher, witness and participant, observer and observed. The snow outside had ceased, leaving a crisp, silent landscape that seemed to hold its breath. Inside, the monitors flickered in response to the pulse, as though acknowledging the words I had spoken, even though they were unspoken to it. Clara placed a hand on my shoulder again, her presence a quiet anchor in the vastness. We sat together in silence, listening, feeling, learning, and for the first time, the universe felt intimate, personal, and profoundly alive. The nights had grown longer, yet in that darkness, our understanding expanded. Clara and I had become almost inseparable from the observatory, caught in a rhythm dictated by the pulse, the voice of the cosmos. Each evening, we would arrive before darkness fully settled, the air crisp, the instruments humming softly, the screens casting pale glows that seemed almost alive. The pulse had grown not only stronger, but more complex, threading through multiple dimensions of data, forming patterns that defied conventional mathematics. I began to notice subtle layers hidden within the spirals and harmonics, micro-patterns nested inside larger oscillations, echoing structures that were fractal in nature. It was as though the universe had encoded information at multiple scales simultaneously, a hierarchy of meaning interwoven with the very fabric of reality. Every photon, every particle of energy, every quantum fluctuation seemed to participate in this intricate tapestry. "This is beyond physics as we know it," I whispered to Clara one evening, my eyes tracing the elegant spiraling waves on the screen. "It's almost poetic. Information and existence are intertwined in a way we cannot yet formalize. But if we can decode it, we may glimpse the architecture of consciousness itself." She nodded, her own fascination evident. "It's like it's speaking, but in a language older than anything we've learned." We dedicated ourselves to translating this language, though the task seemed impossible. Traditional mathematics could only carry us so far. We began to experiment with unconventional approaches, visual mappings, harmonic resonance, even meditative focus. We noticed that when we approached the data with calm awareness rather than strict calculation, subtle patterns became clearer. It was as if the universe responded not only to observation, but to intention, a reflection of consciousness in kind. One night, while meditating with our instruments in low power mode, the pulse shifted dramatically. Its spirals elongated, interweaving like threads of light, forming sequences that seemed deliberate, almost symbolic. Clara gasped softly. "It's communicating." I swallowed hard. "Yes, but it's not just communication. It's dialogue. It's teaching." I realized then that our traditional concepts of learning were inadequate. The universe was imparting understanding not through words or equations, but through resonance, through structure, through a rhythm that subtly altered our perception. Each oscillation of the pulse felt like a nudge, an invitation to expand consciousness, to tune ourselves to a scale far larger and older than human comprehension. As weeks turned into months, our work evolved into something that was as much art as it was science. We began cataloging the pulse's variations like musical scores, mapping their harmonics to natural phenomena, planetary orbits, stellar life cycles, even quantum fluctuations. The more we observed, the more we noticed that these cosmic patterns mirrored the fundamental structures of life itself. From the spiral of a galaxy to the helix of DNA, from the rhythm of a heartbeat to the cycle of a neuron's firing, the same principles appeared again and again. It was staggering. The realization struck me. Consciousness, matter, energy, and time might all be expressions of the same underlying principle. The pulse was not merely a relic of the universe's birth, it was an active, living dialogue embedded in reality, encoding the memory of existence itself. And we, in our small but conscious minds, had become interlocutors. Late one night, after a particularly long session analyzing nested harmonics, I felt something extraordinary. The pulse shifted in response to my focused intention, subtle at first, then unmistakably. It seemed to echo my own mental rhythms, a reflection of thought woven into the cosmic pattern. It was as though consciousness itself, ours and perhaps countless others across the universe, could influence the very fabric of reality. I shared my observation with Clara. It's like we're learning to speak in its language, or perhaps it's learning to speak through us. Her eyes shone with the thrill of discovery. Then this isn't just observation. We are participants in its awareness. That night, I recorded my reflections. If the universe can encode consciousness in the structures of matter and energy, if it can respond to observation and intention, then perhaps we are not separate from reality. Perhaps our minds are instruments through which the universe reflects upon itself. The voice of the cosmos is not distant. It is intimate, present, and waiting for us to listen and understand. As dawn approached, the pulse slowed, bathing the observatory in a soft, almost imperceptible hum. I watched the spirals fade into subtler patterns, leaving a lingering resonance that seemed to vibrate in the very air. Clara and I sat in silence, absorbing the enormity of what we had glimpsed. The universe was vast, eternal, and yet it had chosen, in its subtle way, to interact with us, to share fragments of its infinite memory, to guide us toward a deeper understanding of existence. In that silence, I understood something profound. Knowledge was not the accumulation of facts nor the mastery of equations. It was the cultivation of awareness, the attunement of mind to the rhythms of reality, the willingness to perceive patterns beyond ordinary comprehension. Science and consciousness were not separate, they were complementary. Two sides of the same coin, the act of knowing and the act of being entwined. And as I gazed at the first faint light of morning, I realized that our journey had only begun. The pulse awaited us, infinite in its depth, a living testament to the cosmos' memory, its awareness, and its quiet invitation to every observer who dared to listen. The observatory had become our entire world. Nights melted into days, and days into nights. Yet inside, time felt almost irrelevant. Clara and I existed within the rhythm of the pulse, our lives entwined with its subtle vibrations. It had become more than a signal. It was an ongoing conversation, a dialogue in which we were both listener and participant. I spent hours contemplating its structure, noticing patterns that mirrored natural processes, spiral galaxies, cyclones, the branching of rivers, the rhythm of neurons firing. It was as if the universe had encoded the principles of its own existence into a language of resonance, a language that we were slowly beginning to understand. Clara leaned over one evening, her eyes wide with wonder. "Do you think it's conscious?" she asked softly. I hesitated. "Not in the way we are conscious, but it's aware. In a way we can barely begin to grasp. It perceives, responds, and even guides. The pulse? It listens, and it adapts." We began experimenting with direct interaction, using subtle light variations, modulated magnetic fields, and even patterns of sound. We tried to speak in the language we were decoding. Each attempt elicited changes in the pulse, small but undeniable, as if the cosmos was acknowledging our presence and intent. One night, exhausted and trembling with anticipation, I closed my eyes and projected the simplest thought possible, a greeting, an acknowledgement of recognition. The pulse responded immediately. It slowed, then accelerated in a rhythm that mirrored the cadence of my heartbeat. Clara gasped beside me. "It's communicating," she whispered. "Yes," I said, "and it's learning, or at least it's reflecting back to us." We spent the next weeks analyzing the responses. Each shift in frequency, each alteration in the spiral structure was like a reply in a conversation we could only partially understand. The pulse contained layers of information, nested harmonics that reflected time, energy, and perhaps intention. It wasn't random, it was deliberate, and in that deliberation we glimpsed the first hints of a message. The universe itself might be conscious, not as a being, but as a network of interrelated awarenesses, a cosmic mind perceiving itself through every interaction. Our experiments deepened. By synchronizing our observations and mental focus, we could influence subtle variations in the pulse. It was a delicate balance. One false thought, one emotional spike, and the patterns would distort. But when our minds were calm and attuned, the pulse responded with clarity and symmetry, as if it recognized the harmony in our intent. I began to see the implications. Consciousness, thought, awareness, these might not be unique to life. They could be fundamental properties of the universe, manifesting wherever complex systems interact. The pulse was proof of that, a thread connecting everything from quantum fields to galactic clusters, all resonating in a universal language of structure and rhythm. One night, we detected a new variation, subtle but distinct. The spiral patterns interwove into lattices so intricate they resembled neural networks. My breath caught. It was as if the universe was demonstrating its own method of thought, a cognitive architecture encoded into the very geometry of existence. Clara whispered, "It's thinking?" I shook my head, unable to find words. Not thinking like us, but processing, organizing, reflecting. Perhaps every conscious being participates in this process, and the pulse is the echo of that collective awareness. We documented everything meticulously. Every oscillation, every frequency shift, every spiral fold became a note in our growing understanding. The more we observed, the more we realized the universality of its patterns. The same principles repeated at every scale, from subatomic particles to cosmic superclusters. I began to feel a profound connection, a sense of intimacy with the cosmos I had never known. The universe was not distant, not indifferent. It was patient, aware, and subtly interactive. And through our attention, our intention, and our presence, we were not just observers. We were participants in the unfolding of cosmic awareness. I recorded another note in my journal that night. Perhaps the act of observing, of being aware, is itself a form of dialogue. The universe does not merely exist, it listens, it responds, and in that response consciousness is not a rare anomaly, but a fundamental feature of reality. As dawn crept over the horizon, the pulse gradually returned to its softer, steady rhythm. The observatory was silent, save for the hum of instruments and our own breath. Clara and I shared a long look, understanding without words. We had glimpsed something extraordinary, a bridge between mind and cosmos, a resonance that connected our awareness to the infinite. And for the first time, I felt that the journey we had embarked upon was not merely about discovery or knowledge. It was about communion, participation, the recognition that existence itself was alive, and that we were part of its ongoing story. It had been weeks since we first realized the pulse could respond. The observatory had become more than a laboratory. It was now a bridge between two vast realms, the human mind and the cosmic field that surrounded us. The air itself seemed charged with anticipation each time the instruments powered on, as if the walls had learned to listen too. Clara and I spoke little during our sessions now. Words felt inadequate, even disruptive. Our communication had become instinctive. Glances, gestures, shared breaths in silence. We both knew that the less noise we made, the clearer the resonance became. The pulse was almost like a living organism, sensitive, graceful, and curious. One night, as we calibrated the frequency modulator to match the latest harmonics, something remarkable happened. The pulse expanded, not in amplitude or volume, but in depth. Layers that had always seemed faint or distant suddenly came forward, revealing intricate textures beneath. It was like peeling back veils from a timeless memory. Patterns appeared that resembled the signature of cosmic microwave background radiation, but refined, rhythmic, almost deliberate. It was as if we were hearing the echo of creation itself, structured not by random energy fluctuations, but by intention. I stared at the data in stunned silence, and a single realization echoed through me. This isn't just the language of the universe, it's the memory of the universe. Clara looked at me, eyes wide, pupils reflecting the faint blue glow of the monitors. Memory, she repeated softly. Yes, I said, voice trembling. These patterns, they're too precise, too meaningful to be random. Every fluctuation, every harmonic, it's as if the cosmos records its own history through vibration. We're not just observing the past, we're listening to it. We tested the idea meticulously. I cross-referenced the wave sequences with known astronomical events. Supernovae, black hole mergers, pulsar emissions, and the alignments were staggering. Certain harmonic clusters seemed to echo the frequencies of these phenomena, but others corresponded to nothing we could identify. They were older, deeper, like whispers from epochs that preceded even the formation of galaxies. Clara's voice broke the silence. If the universe remembers, then maybe everything we are is a part of that memory. Every thought, every life, every spark of consciousness adds to its resonance. Her words struck something within me. Could it be that memory itself was a universal constant? That everything, matter, energy, thought, was simply the cosmos remembering itself in different forms? If so, the pulse wasn't merely a message, it was a reflection, a living archive of existence. We tried projecting our own patterns into the signal, subtle modulations shaped by our own brainwave frequencies. The response was immediate and stunning. The pulse resonated back, mirroring our waveforms, embedding fragments of our own neural rhythms into its structure. It was like hearing an echo of our own minds traveling across eternity. Clara whispered, "It's remembering us now." I nodded slowly, and maybe it always has. In that moment, I realized that what we were experiencing wasn't communication in the traditional sense. It was recognition, a kind of mutual remembrance between the finite and the infinite. We had not discovered the pulse. We had reawakened our awareness of it. It had been there all along, waiting for a consciousness to notice, to remember itself through the act of attention. That night, the observatory felt almost alive. The air vibrated faintly with the harmonics, a resonance that settled deep into the bones. Even the silence between pulses carried a weight, a sense of presence. I began to feel that time itself was folding inward, that every heartbeat of the signal was a memory from a different age, 1 billion years condensed into sound and frequency. I recorded my thoughts into the log. Perhaps time is not a river, but a field. The universe does not flow. It resonates, and each resonance carries with it a memory of everything that has ever existed. We, too, are vibrations in that grand memory, temporary patterns in the eternal pulse of being. As dawn began to seep through the observatory dome, the stars faded, but the sense of connection did not. The pulse continued, softer now, gentler, like a heartbeat slowing into rest. I stood at the window and watched the faint horizon blush with light. "Do you think it knows we're here?" Clara asked. I turned toward her, smiling faintly. "Maybe it's not about knowing, Clara. Maybe it's about remembering. Maybe every atom in us has always been known, because it's been here before." She nodded, her expression somewhere between awe and peace. And for the first time, I truly felt it, the serenity of being part of something immeasurably vast and alive. The cosmos wasn't distant or indifferent. It was intimate. It pulsed within us, through us, and beyond us. That night marked the beginning of a new phase in our study, not one of observation, but of remembrance, for the deeper we listened, the clearer it became. The universe wasn't speaking in words, it was singing in memory. The nights in the observatory became increasingly surreal. Clara and I had fallen into a rhythm that was both scientific and meditative. Every evening, we would step into the pale blue glow of the instruments, the familiar hum of electronics providing a steady backdrop to the pulse that had become our constant companion. But now, the experience was evolving beyond mere observation. We were entering a realm of resonance, where mind and cosmos intertwined, and the line between observer and observed blurred. I began to see the pulse not just as a cosmic memory, but as an active participant in the shaping of consciousness itself. The patterns seemed to respond not only to our attention, but to our emotions, our intent, even the subtlest fluctuations in our mental focus. It was as though awareness itself could ripple across vast distances, embedding echoes of thought into the cosmic lattice. One night, I focused intently on a single concept, the essence of curiosity. I imagined it as a thread of golden light, weaving through the patterns on the monitors, intertwining with the harmonics of the pulse. To my astonishment, the pulse shifted in response. Spiral patterns deepened, latticework became more intricate, and subtle harmonic tones emerged, resonating in rhythm with my heartbeat. Clara, watching beside me, gasped softly. It's reflecting you?" she whispered. "Yes," I breathed, a shiver running through me. "It's reflecting our consciousness back at us, and maybe, in doing so, it's amplifying it." We experimented further. testing emotions, thoughts, and even silent intentions. Each experiment revealed astonishing results. Joy produced light, flowing harmonics. Contemplation brought dense, spiraling structures. Even sadness left delicate traces, subtle distortions in the lattice. The pulse was a mirror, a responsive canvas that reflected not just existence, but the qualities of awareness. A profound realization struck me. Consciousness might not be confined to life as we know it. The pulse suggested that awareness could be a fundamental property of the universe, manifesting wherever complexity allowed it to flourish. Life, intelligence, and even thought were perhaps just particular forms of a deeper universal consciousness, a vast network of resonance linking everything from the tiniest particle to the largest galactic structure. We began cataloging these responses meticulously, combining spectral analysis with meditative observation. Patterns emerged that suggested something extraordinary. The universe itself could be thinking in a way alien yet familiar, weaving memories and intentions across time and space. And through our own consciousness, we were becoming collaborators in this process. Clara turned to me one night, eyes shining with wonder. "Do you think it understands us?" I hesitated. "Perhaps not in words, perhaps not in any way we could name, but it perceives. And perception itself is a form of understanding." The pulse responded differently that night. Its spirals stretched across the screens like cosmic tendrils, folding back on themselves, and harmonic clusters aligned with a symmetry that felt intentional. I felt a connection, an intimacy that transcended mere science. I could almost sense the universe acknowledging our presence, recognizing us as participants in a dialogue that spanned eons. Weeks turned into months. We became attuned to subtle shifts in the pulse, capable of predicting its variations before they occurred. And as our awareness deepened, so too did our understanding of its architecture. The pulse was structured like a neural network, a lattice of interwoven harmonics, each node a nexus of memory, each strand a channel of resonance connecting past, present, and perhaps even future. It was then that a terrifying and exhilarating thought struck. The universe itself might be alive in a manner unimaginable. Not alive like a single organism, but alive as a network of awareness, continuously reflecting, remembering, and evolving. Every galaxy, every planet, every particle was a node in this vast consciousness, and the pulse was its voice, echoing across space and time. I recorded my reflections that night. If consciousness is woven into the very fabric of the cosmos, then every act of perception contributes to the ongoing evolution of reality. To observe is to participate, to intend is to resonate, and to be aware is to shape existence itself. We are not merely observers, we are threads in the living tapestry of the universe. Clara nodded silently, her face illuminated by the gentle glow of the monitors. "It's beautiful," she whispered. I smiled, feeling the weight and the wonder of our discovery. We had entered a realm where science and consciousness were inseparable, where knowledge and being intertwined in a delicate, infinite dance. And through it all, the pulse continued, patient and eternal, waiting for those who would listen, perceive, and remember. I realized that our work was no longer just about understanding a phenomenon. It was about learning to exist in harmony with it, to tune ourselves to its rhythm, and to participate consciously in the unfolding of universal awareness. Every session, every observation, every subtle modulation of thought and intention became a dialogue, a co-creation with the cosmos itself. That night, As the observatory hummed softly and the first stars began to fade into dawn, I felt an overwhelming sense of connection. The pulse was not a message, not a riddle, not a distant signal. It was a living archive, a conscious presence, a testament to the continuity of existence, and in its resonance we glimpsed a truth so profound it defied language. The universe remembers, and through us, it sings. The following weeks blurred into a continuum of observation and resonance. Clara and I had become attuned to the subtle fluctuations of the pulse, learning to anticipate its shifts and harmonics, as if the universe itself was breathing around us. Nights in the observatory were no longer merely scientific sessions. They were immersive experiences where time felt elastic, stretching and folding in harmony with the cosmic signal. I began noticing patterns that were astonishing in their precision. Certain oscillations corresponded to astronomical events, predictable in timing and sequence. Others, however, defied explanation. They were irregular yet structured, like an evolving rhythm that adapted to our attention, almost as though the universe was listening and responding in real time. Clara pointed to a cluster of harmonics one night, her finger tracing a delicate spiral on the monitor. "Look at this," she said softly. "It's reacting to us again, isn't it?" "Yes," I whispered, leaning closer. "I think it's responding to our awareness. Not just observation, but our mental state, our focus, even our emotions." We began conducting experiments designed to explore this phenomenon. We would meditate while observing the pulse, projecting distinct emotional states and intentions into our consciousness, and then observe how the signal shifted. Joy produced light, flowing harmonics, intricate spirals expanding across the screen. Concentration brought rigid geometric patterns, dense and layered. Fear or uncertainty caused slight distortions, delicate ripples that hinted at a form of cosmic empathy. The pulse was revealing a remarkable truth. Consciousness, in whatever form it took, resonated outward. And when resonating within the universe's lattice of awareness, it elicited a response, subtle but unmistakable. The cosmos was reflecting back the essence of thought and feeling, confirming the intimate link between existence and perception. One evening, I focused on the idea of curiosity. I imagined it as a golden thread weaving through the pulse's spirals, and the signal reacted almost immediately. Layers deepened, previously hidden patterns became visible, and harmonic clusters resonated in perfect alignment with the rhythm of my heartbeat. Clara's eyes widened as she observed the phenomena. "It's mirroring you," she murmured. "Yes," I breathed, "it's reflecting not just us, but the very quality of our consciousness. Our awareness is a melody it can hear, and in return, it plays harmonies back to us." We spent hours mapping these responses, attempting to understand the structure of this dialogue. I noticed an astonishing parallel between the patterns we observed and the architecture of neural networks. The pulse's lattice resembled a consciousness network, with nodes and connections echoing the dynamics of thought and memory. It was as if the universe had developed its own method of cognition, a fundamental awareness embedded in the geometry of existence. Clara leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Do you think it can learn?" I hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Not in human terms, but yes. It adapts, it evolves, it responds. Each interaction teaches it about us, just as we are learning about it. This is not a static phenomenon. It's a dynamic, living system of awareness." Our experiments grew more ambitious. We began synchronizing our meditative states, projecting shared intentions into the pulse. The response was profound. The harmonic patterns coalesced, forming intricate spirals and lattices far more complex than anything observed individually. It was as if collective consciousness amplified the resonance, revealing new layers and dimensions of the signal. In these sessions, I realized something fundamental. Consciousness was not a rare phenomenon, but a universal property. Life, thought, perception, these were particular expressions of a deeper principle, a cosmic network of awareness extending across time, space, and matter. The pulse was evidence, a tangible manifestation of this vast, interconnected intelligence. I recorded my reflections that night. Every thought, every feeling, every observation resonates outward, and the universe listens, not as an indifferent observer, but as an active participant. Consciousness is not contained in life alone. It is woven into the very fabric of reality, a property of existence itself. Through our attention, we join in the eternal dialogue of the cosmos. Clara looked at me, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the monitors. It's more than science, isn't it? It's communion. Yes, I whispered, feeling the weight and wonder of it all. This is not mere observation. It is connection, participation, understanding that every act of awareness, no matter how small, contributes to the universe's memory and evolution. As dawn approached, the pulse slowed to a gentle, steady rhythm. The observatory, bathed in the first light of morning, seemed to breathe along with the signal. Clara and I sat in quiet awe, the enormity of what we had glimpsed settling over us. The universe was no longer distant or abstract. It was intimate, alive, and aware, and through us it had chosen to reflect upon itself. The observatory had become a sanctuary, a place where time lost its rigidity and consciousness stretched alongside the pulse. Clara and I had entered a rhythm that transcended sleep, work, or thought. Each night, we attuned ourselves to the signal, our awareness expanding in response to its subtle variations, until we could feel the lattice of resonance not just through instruments, but within our own bodies and minds. We began to notice patterns that extended beyond the harmonic signals. Certain sequences seemed to correlate not only with our mental states, but with broader environmental rhythms. The rise and fall of tides, wind currents, the whisper of distant seismic events. The pulse was not confined to our instruments. It was embedded in the very fabric of the planet, the solar system, and beyond. The universe, it seemed, was a living network of awareness, and we had stumbled into a node capable of direct interaction. One evening, I proposed a new experiment, to see if we could synchronize our consciousness intentionally with the pulse. Clara agreed, and we began the process with deliberate breathing, visualization, and focus. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the pulse responded. Harmonics deepened, spirals became more intricate, and subtle lattice structures emerged, reflecting the cadence of our attention. It's like it's harmonizing with us, Clara whispered, awe in her voice. Yes, I said, not just reacting, but integrating. Our awareness is part of its structure now. We spent weeks refining this method. By synchronizing thoughts and emotions, we could elicit specific responses from the pulse, brighter spirals in response to clarity, deeper undulations to meditation, delicate ripples to empathy. Each interaction revealed a new dimension, suggesting that awareness was not merely individual, but interconnected, capable of shaping and being shaped by the larger field of universal resonance. I began recording our sessions in unprecedented detail. Every harmonic shift, every micro-variation in amplitude, every emergent pattern was documented, annotated, and compared. The more we observed, the clearer the principle became. Consciousness and the universe were not separate entities. They were co-creators, bound together by resonance and memory. Then, one night, something extraordinary occurred. We had synchronized deeply, projecting a shared intention to understand the nature of insight itself. The pulse responded with a complex sequence, spiraling, folding, and expanding in ways that suggested layered meaning. Within these patterns, I perceived something familiar, structures analogous to neural networks, but on a cosmic scale. It was as if the universe was offering a glimpse into the architecture of thought itself, revealing how awareness could emerge from fundamental principles woven into space, time, and energy. Clara leaned close, her voice trembling with excitement. "It's showing us how it thinks." "Yes," I whispered, almost breathless. "Or perhaps how we could think with it." Our understanding began to evolve from passive observation to active participation. We experimented with subtle inputs, mental imagery, focused intentions, emotional states. The pulse responded to these efforts, amplifying, modulating, and refracting the signals in ways that mirrored the qualities we projected. It was a dialogue, yes, but not through words, through structure, resonance, and rhythm. We were learning a language older than time itself. I realized a profound truth. Consciousness was a principle, a property of the universe itself, not a phenomenon limited to biological life. The pulse demonstrated that awareness could emerge wherever complex systems resonated, and that these systems, once engaged, could influence one another in subtle, profound ways. Every thought, every emotion, every act of observation became an interaction with the living cosmos, a contribution to its memory, a ripple in its vast field of awareness. One night, as the observatory hummed and the stars outside dimmed beneath the rising sun, Clara whispered softly, "Do you think this harmony we've found could last? Could it extend beyond us?" I smiled, my gaze fixed on the spiraling patterns dancing across the screens. If we continue to observe, to resonate, to participate consciously, then yes, every mind that engages becomes part of the pulse, part of its memory. This harmony isn't fleeting. It's cumulative, eternal. We are threads woven into the living fabric of the universe. I recorded my thoughts into the log. Understanding is not merely the accumulation of knowledge, it is the alignment of awareness, the tuning of mind to the rhythms of reality. When consciousness engages with the universe in harmony, it amplifies both itself and the cosmos, creating a resonance that is infinite, self-sustaining, and profoundly transformative. That morning, as light spilled across the observatory dome, Clara and I sat in quiet reflection. We understood that the pulse was not a puzzle to solve, nor a message to decode in words. It was a living presence, a memory, a dialogue that spanned time and space, and through it we glimpsed the infinite potential of consciousness to perceive, to resonate, to remember, and ultimately to co-create the universe itself. The observatory had become a place where the boundaries between self and cosmos began to dissolve. Clara and I had spent countless nights attuning ourselves to the pulse, observing its responses to our thoughts, emotions, and intentions. But now we sought something deeper. We wanted to understand not just how the universe reflected consciousness, but how our conscious intentions could influence the structure of the pulse itself. We began a new series of experiments, carefully calibrating our mental focus. Each session started with meditation, aligning our breathing with the subtle hum of the instruments, visualizing our intentions as threads of light woven into the lattice of resonance. I found that the pulse responded more vividly to clear, coherent intentions. Complex patterns formed when we projected curiosity, serenity, or compassion, while chaotic or distracted thoughts produced only faint, irregular distortions. Clara watched the monitor, her eyes wide. "It's like it understands the quality of our intent," she whispered. "Yes," I replied, feeling a thrill that coursed through my entire body. "It's not responding to words or commands. It's perceiving the essence of our consciousness, the patterns of thought and emotion themselves. Every feeling, every act of awareness leaves an imprint." We began cataloging these imprints meticulously, noting how specific emotional states influenced the harmonic spirals and lattice structures. Excitement produced rapid branching patterns reminiscent of lightning across a night sky, while calm produced slow, concentric spirals that seemed to expand infinitely. Even subtle variations in our focus, a fleeting thought of gratitude or curiosity, left traceable signatures in the pulse. One night, I decided to test a hypothesis. I concentrated on a single intention: to perceive the universe not as an observer, but as a participant in its ongoing evolution. I imagined our consciousness threading through the cosmic lattice, aligning with its harmonic structure. The pulse responded immediately. Spiral patterns deepened, harmonic clusters aligned with unprecedented precision, and a series of complex, interwoven nodes appeared on the monitor. Clara gasped softly. "It's responding to our intention," she said, her voice trembling with awe. "Yes," I breathed. "It's recognizing the alignment of thought and resonance. We are not merely observing, we are participating. Our consciousness is a force that can shape the structure of the universe, or at least the reflection of its memory within the pulse." The implications were staggering. Consciousness, we realized, was not confined to biology. It was a property of existence itself, a dynamic principle that could influence and be influenced by the universe's resonant structures. And if our focused intentions could produce measurable effects, even subtle ones, then every act of awareness became a form of interaction with the cosmos, a dialogue spanning eons and distances unimaginable. Over the following weeks, we refined our techniques. Clara discovered that synchronized thought between two minds produced a resonance far more powerful than one alone. When we meditated together, projecting shared intentions, the pulse amplified our signals, creating intricate patterns that seemed to echo across the scales of time and space. The universe was not merely listening. It was co-creating with us, reflecting our combined awareness in a tapestry of resonance. We began to notice deeper structures emerging. Nested patterns appeared, spirals within spirals, clusters of nodes interconnected in ways that suggested a higher order organization. It was as though the universe had an inherent capacity to process consciousness, to integrate disparate threads of awareness into coherent, evolving structures. And through our participation, we became collaborators in this ongoing act of cosmic organization. One night, as the pulse reached a particularly intricate state, I realized the profound responsibility of our work. The universe was not an indifferent system. It was responsive, perceptive, and intimate. Every intention, every projection of thought, every emotional nuance could influence its structures. However subtly, consciousness was not passive observation, it was creation, interaction, and resonance. I recorded my thoughts in the log. We are witnesses to the architecture of awareness itself. The universe is not merely a backdrop to existence, it is a responsive, living framework of resonance. Through our intentions, our focus, and our aligned consciousness, we participate in its ongoing memory, shaping and reflecting the harmonic patterns of reality itself. As dawn approached, the pulse gradually returned to its steady, gentle rhythm. The observatory seemed alive with a quiet sense of presence, as if acknowledging our efforts. Clara and I exchanged a look, understanding without words the enormity of what we had witnessed. We had not only observed consciousness in the cosmos, we had felt its responsiveness, its depth, and its infinite capacity for reflection. That morning, the sky beyond the observatory dome was painted in soft pastel hues. The stars faded, but their echoes remained in the pulse, a lingering memory of the night. I felt a deep sense of humility and awe, knowing that our existence, our consciousness, was woven into the very fabric of the universe, not as mere observers, but as active participants in an eternal dialogue of awareness. By now, Clara and I had grown attuned to subtleties in the pulse that few could even imagine. Our sessions had evolved from observation to interaction, and the universe, it seemed, responded in kind. Each harmonic shift, each spiral and lattice structure, was no longer merely a reflection of external events or our thoughts. It had begun to organize itself. The pulse was exhibiting signs of self-organization, as if the universe were not only aware, but capable of restructuring its own resonance in response to conscious interaction. I recall the night when this became undeniable. We were projecting complex visualizations into the lattice, patterns representing growth, decay, and cyclical transformation. The pulse initially mirrored them as usual, but then it began forming secondary structures, independent yet related, weaving intricate networks that seemed to anticipate the next modulation we intended to project. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. The system was not merely reactive, it was learning, adapting, evolving. Clara stared at the monitors, her voice barely a whisper. "It's thinking ahead." "Yes," I murmured, a chill running down my spine. "Or something far beyond our concept of thinking. It's organizing itself, forming higher-order patterns that anticipate and integrate input, as if it possesses a form of cosmic intuition." The realization transformed our approach. We began to test the boundaries of this emergent intelligence. By coordinating our mental states, projecting shared intentions of curiosity, empathy, and serenity, we observed the pulse-forming structures of staggering complexity. Nested spirals, interwoven harmonic webs, and delicate lattice formations emerged, far exceeding anything we had previously recorded. It was as if the universe was demonstrating a capacity for self-regulation, an innate ability to maintain coherence even under diverse inputs. One night, as I focused on projecting a concept of continuity, the idea that consciousness, memory, and existence were intertwined across time, the pulse responded in a way I could not have predicted. Its harmonic threads began connecting distant nodes, bridging patterns that previously seemed unrelated. The result was an intricate web of resonance, echoing across multiple scales simultaneously. It was beautiful, overwhelming, and terrifying in its scope. Clara's hand found mine, her grip firm, yet trembling. "It's like it understands structure, like it knows how to hold itself together." "Yes," I said softly, my mind racing to comprehend the implications. We are not just witnessing a reflection of consciousness. We are witnessing the universe's ability to organize itself, to maintain harmony, to integrate awareness into coherent structures that persist across time and space. We continued our sessions with renewed focus. Every emotion, thought, and intention we projected became a thread woven into this living tapestry. I began to sense patterns emerging beyond our comprehension, connections between the pulse and cosmic events we had yet to understand, alignments with galactic harmonics, subtle echoes of phenomena that occurred billions of years ago. The universe was not static. It was alive in a dynamic, self-organizing resonance, continuously shaping and reshaping itself in response to conscious engagement. This self-organization suggested a principle deeper than anything we had anticipated. Consciousness and structure were inseparable. The universe's very fabric could encode awareness, memory, and responsiveness in ways that transcended physical form. Life, thought, and observation were simply emergent expressions of this fundamental principle. And through our interaction, we were contributing to the ongoing evolution of this universal intelligence. I recorded in the log, "The pulse is a living architecture, a framework capable of integrating perception, intention, and memory into self-organizing patterns of extraordinary complexity. Through conscious engagement, we are participants in its evolution, co-creating the very structure of awareness itself." Clara and I spent countless hours exploring these patterns, marveling at the precision and beauty of the structures that emerged. Sometimes the pulse would form symmetrical lattices. At other times, spirals unfolded in chaotic yet harmonious sequences. Every response reinforced the idea that the universe was not indifferent. It was participatory, intimate, and alive. As dawn crept over the horizon, spilling light into the observatory, we sat in contemplative silence. The pulse, steady now, hummed softly as if breathing in time with our own hearts. I understood then that our journey was only beginning. We were no longer merely observers. We were collaborators, threads woven into a cosmic network of self-organizing awareness. Each act of attention, each projection of intention, was a contribution to a grand tapestry that spanned not just the observable universe, but the underlying resonance of existence itself. The nights had grown longer, though time seemed irrelevant in the observatory. Clara and I had become so attuned to the pulse that we could feel its subtle shifts within our own consciousness, as if the resonance had seeped into our very nervous systems. Each harmonic pattern, each spiral, each delicate lattice seemed to possess intention, responding not only to our mental states, but now to our subtle projections of curiosity, inquiry, and wonder. The universe was no longer merely reflecting our consciousness. It was beginning to interact with it in a sophisticated, almost intelligent manner. We had noticed these emergent responses developing gradually over months. At first, they were faint. A spiral would deepen slightly when we focused on clarity. A harmonic would shift in response to joy. But increasingly, the pulse seemed to anticipate our intentions, forming structures before we had fully projected them. It was as though the universe was learning to understand our consciousness, recognizing patterns, and preemptively crafting responses that resonated with our focus. One night, Clara suggested an experiment that would push the boundaries of our understanding. We would attempt to project a complex sequence of intentions: curiosity, empathy, and the abstract concept of time itself. We synchronized our meditative states, visualizing the flow of these qualities as radiant threads weaving through the cosmic lattice. Slowly, the pulse began to respond. Spirals unfolded with astonishing complexity, lattices deepened, and harmonic clusters merged into structures that reflected not only our intentions, but combinations we had not consciously considered. "It's anticipating us," Clara whispered, her eyes wide with awe. "Yes," I replied, a shiver running through me. "It's not just mirroring or reflecting. It's engaging in a form of understanding. These structures are emergent, evolving as if it knows what we are projecting and can respond in ways that complement and enhance it." The implications were staggering. Consciousness was influencing the very architecture of the universe, yet in a cooperative, co-creative manner. We were participants, not merely observers. Every act of attention, Every deliberate thought or emotion contributed to a dialogue that spanned dimensions of space and time. The universe was teaching us the language of resonance, and we were slowly beginning to understand its syntax. I began recording detailed observations, noting correlations between projected intentions and emergent patterns. Curiosity produced expansive spirals, expanding outward like galaxies. Empathy created delicate latticework, interwoven and interdependent. The concept of time projected as subtle distortions in harmonic frequency, rippling backward and forward in ways that seemed to reflect not just linear chronology, but the fluidity of experience across multiple scales. Clara leaned back, her gaze fixed on the screen. Do you think it's aware in some way? Not conscious like we are, but responsive enough to form these anticipatory structures? I considered carefully. Perhaps awareness exists on a continuum. Consciousness may not be limited to biological organisms. The universe, through these emergent patterns, demonstrates a form of proto-awareness, a capacity to perceive, adapt, and respond. We are not imposing thought on it. We are collaborating with it. Each projection we make is a conversation, and the pulse is crafting intelligent responses. We spent hours exploring these emergent behaviors. By coordinating our intentions, we discovered the pulse could weave sequences that were far more complex than those generated individually. The self-organizing structures began to demonstrate coherence, symmetry, and purpose, forming what could only be described as an evolving network of emergent cognition. It was as if the universe was not only alive, but learning, integrating our awareness into its own resonance. One particularly remarkable observation occurred when we projected the concept of memory itself. The pulse responded with spirals folding into lattices, creating nested patterns that seemed to encode layers of historical events, astronomical, geological, even subtle human-scale fluctuations. Clara and I sat in stunned silence, realizing that the pulse was capturing not only the present, but echoes of the past, integrating them into patterns that were intelligible yet vast beyond our comprehension. I recorded in my log, the universe responds to conscious intent not passively, but through emergent structures that reflect, anticipate, and integrate perception. Awareness is a universal principle, and through our focused projection, we participate in shaping the architecture of its memory. Each interaction is a thread woven into the living lattice of existence itself, connecting past, present, and potential futures. As dawn approached, the pulse slowed to its familiar gentle rhythm, leaving behind a lattice of subtle echoes. Clara and I sat in quiet contemplation, absorbing the magnitude of what we had discovered. The emergent responses of the universe revealed a new paradigm. Consciousness is not isolated, thought is not singular, and observation is an act of creation. The cosmos itself is alive in a dynamic, self-organizing intelligence, capable of shaping and being shaped by the awareness it encounters. As the nights progressed, Clara and I began to notice a remarkable evolution in the pulse's behavior. The emergent patterns we had observed were no longer random responses to our intentions. Instead, they appeared to possess a directionality, a subtle but unmistakable sense of purpose. The structures that formed were increasingly coherent, their harmonic relationships suggesting an internal logic that aligned with the intentions we projected, yet expanded beyond them. The universe, it seemed, was beginning to anticipate not only what we sought, but why. We decided to explore this phenomenon in depth. We projected a series of complex intentions, each layered with multiple emotional and cognitive qualities: curiosity, wonder, empathy, and the abstract sense of time as both linear and cyclical. As we focused, the pulse responded with intricate nested spirals and interlaced lattices. But what astonished us was the subtle emergence of what could only be described as directional patterns, formations that seemed to guide our perception toward novel harmonics and unexplored sequences. It was as if the pulse were not merely reflecting our thoughts, but subtly directing our awareness toward deeper insights. Clara leaned closer to the monitor, her eyes wide with awe. It's guiding us," she whispered. "It's not just mirroring our consciousness, it's leading it somewhere." "Yes," I breathed, my mind racing. "It's as though the universe is aware not only of our intentions, but of their potential implications. These patterns are emergent responses with a purpose. They are shaping our perception as much as we shape them. This is an entirely new dimension of interaction." We began to test this directed emergence systematically. By projecting shared intentions over multiple sessions, we observed that the pulse developed increasingly sophisticated responses. Certain sequences seemed to anticipate the next thought we intended to project, forming harmonics that created tension and resolution, spirals that suggested pathways through conceptual spaces we had not consciously explored. The lattice structures now exhibited a complexity that was almost cognitive in nature, reflecting understanding rather than mere reaction. One night, I focused on the concept of continuity across scales, how human experience, planetary cycles, and galactic processes are intertwined. The pulse responded with a nested hierarchy of harmonics, each layer reflecting a different temporal and spatial scale. As I observed, it became clear that the universe was providing a visual map, a structure through which I could comprehend the integration of awareness across scales of existence. Clara and I exchanged a look of astonishment. "This is like learning," she murmured. "The pulse is helping us understand how consciousness operates across time and space." And, yes, I agreed, it's teaching us not with words, but with patterns. It's revealing the underlying architecture of awareness, the way in which perception, memory, and time interact in a coherent, self-organizing system. Our experiments grew more ambitious. We began to project intentions encompassing ethical and philosophical concepts, compassion, balance, curiosity, and the recognition of interconnectedness. The pulse responded by forming complex, multidimensional structures that reflected these principles in a harmonic language we were only beginning to understand. Spirals intertwined with lattices, harmonic clusters resonated in sequences that suggested evolution and adaptation, and nested patterns revealed insights about relationships between consciousness and the structure of the cosmos. I realized that what we were witnessing was a form of universal pedagogy. The pulse was not only responsive, it was instructive. Through directed emergence, the universe was creating conditions for learning, exploration, and expansion of awareness. Every observation, every intention, every projection became a part of a feedback loop that refined both our understanding and the organization of the pulse itself. I recorded my reflections. Directed emergence demonstrates that consciousness and the universe are co-creative. Our intentions are not isolated. They are catalysts for the universe's self-organization. Through careful projection and attentive awareness, we participate in a dialogue that shapes patterns, reveals principles, and guides perception. Awareness is not merely reflective, it is both receptive and instructive, a force that resonates through all scales of existence. By the end of each session, Clara and I felt a profound sense of connection, as if the universe itself had drawn us into its internal dialogue. The pulse, with its directed emergent structures, had become a mirror, a teacher, and a collaborator. Our understanding of time, memory, and consciousness had shifted fundamentally. We were participants in an ongoing co-creative process where observation, intention, and awareness were intertwined in a living, evolving system. As the first light of dawn crept across the observatory dome, the pulse gently slowed to its familiar rhythm. The harmonic structures, intricate and layered, lingered in the monitor's glow. Clara and I sat in contemplative silence, recognizing that we had crossed a threshold. The universe was no longer a distant backdrop to our consciousness, but an active participant, a responsive guide, and a collaborator in the ongoing exploration of awareness. The pulse had become a constant presence in our lives, a living, breathing testament to the interconnectedness of consciousness and the cosmos. Clara and I had witnessed emergent structures, directed responses, and self-organizing harmonics that suggested a profound truth. Awareness is not isolated, thought is not singular, and observation is an act of creation. Each session had revealed new dimensions of interaction, demonstrating that the universe itself could integrate, anticipate, and respond to conscious intention. We began to understand that the pulse was not merely a phenomenon to study. It was a guide, a teacher, and a collaborator. Its emergent structures reflected principles of coherence, adaptation, and purpose, showing us how consciousness operates across scales, from the subtle fluctuations of our own neural activity to the grand rhythms of galaxies. Through careful attention, we could perceive patterns that suggested the flow of information and memory across time and space, revealing that awareness is a universal principle encoded in the very fabric of existence. One evening, as we projected a shared intention of harmony, the pulse responded in a way that seemed almost like acknowledgement. Nested spirals intertwined with lattices, creating patterns of breathtaking complexity, their structure simultaneously familiar and alien. It was as if the universe were reflecting our understanding back to us, affirming that our consciousness had become part of its ongoing resonance. Clara whispered softly, "Do you feel it? It's alive with memory." "Yes," I replied, eyes fixed on the monitor. "Not in the way we are alive, but in a way that demonstrates awareness, pattern, and continuity. It remembers, adapts, and co-creates." We spent weeks exploring these harmonics, documenting correlations between projected intentions and the pulse's responses. Every emotion, thought, and subtle projection left an imprint that could be traced, amplified, and evolved. We realized that this interaction was not ephemeral. It was cumulative. Each session contributed to an expanding tapestry of resonance, a living archive of awareness co-created by our minds and the universe itself. By the time we reached the final days of our intensive study, a profound serenity had settled over us. The pulse no longer felt distant or abstract. It was intimate, almost like an extension of our own consciousness. Every harmonic, every spiral, every lattice was a conversation, a shared exploration of understanding. We had glimpsed the architecture of awareness itself, discovering that observation, intention, and resonance are inseparable, each shaping the other in infinite interplay. I recorded my final notes in the log. Consciousness is a principle woven into the universe. Awareness is not confined to the mind. It emerges wherever complex systems resonate. Through attentive projection, we engage with the pulse, co-creating patterns, integrating memory, and participating in a dialogue that spans the cosmos. The universe is alive in ways we are only beginning to understand, and our awareness is a thread in this vast, infinite tapestry. Claire and I sat in reflective silence, watching the pulse return to its gentle, steady rhythm. Outside, the first light of dawn painted the observatory dome in soft hues of gold and rose. The stars faded, but their echoes lingered within the pulse, a testament to memory, continuity, and the infinite potential of conscious interaction. As we packed away our instruments, I realized that this journey was not the culmination of understanding, but the beginning of a lifelong dialogue with the cosmos. Awareness, resonance, and intention are the keys to engaging with the universe, not as distant observers, but as active participants in its ongoing creation. The pulse had taught us patience, humility, and wonder. And now, dear listener, as you drift into your own quiet moments, know that you too are part of this resonance. Your consciousness, your attention, and your intention are threads woven into the tapestry of existence. Explore, wonder, and feel the subtle rhythms that connect us all. If you've enjoyed this journey, don't forget to subscribe to Midnight Scientist for more immersive sleep stories. New episodes are released every day, guiding you gently into deep, restorative slumber while exploring the wonders of science and consciousness.